For the past several weeks, the website revcom.us has been exposing what is behind the controversy over the Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. The article this week says Pelosi's early August trip to the island of Taiwan was a major and dangerous provocation by U.S. imperialism against its nuclear-armed rival, China. Pelosi left Taiwan, but the U.S. imperialists have continued to rapidly escalate their game of nuclear chicken with China, a game which threatens the very future of humanity. How dangerous is it? No less an authority than the infamous U.S. war criminal Henry Kissinger, a man who oversaw 5 years of the slaughter in Vietnam and Indochina, and who orchestrated the bloody coup that brought down an elected government in Chile, said, quote, "We are at the edge of war with Russia and China on issues which we partly created, without any concept of how this is going to end or what it's supposed to lead to." The articles on RevCom have drilled down beneath the phrases of defending democracy to show you the real class interests at work here. When this show is over, if you haven't read those articles yet, go read them. But the point I want to make in this segment is where the interests of humanity lie in all this, and how other radical political forces are falling out. These rulers of the U.S. are telling you that China is your enemy, but in actual fact, China is their enemy.
But they have an overall goal to become the leading country in the world, the wealthiest country in the world, and the most powerful country in the world. That's not going to happen on my watch.
China is their rival for the #1 exploiter and oppressor of the people of the world, and they want you to line up behind them in their fight to stay on top. What Bob Avakian said a few months ago about America's proxy war with Russia in Ukraine, which, by the way, is an ongoing bloodbath of the Ukrainian people that could still very quickly and unexpectedly escalate to something far worse, essentially holds true here. Quote, "The interests of the imperialists on both sides who are involved in this war are not the same as, and in fact are in fundamental opposition to, the interests of the masses of people." Pause on that. The interests of the imperialists on both sides. The U.S. imperialists, your rulers, have for decades squeezed the blood out of the people of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The clothes on our backs, the cell phone in your pocket, that nice flat screen TV on your wall, even your ecologically correct solar panels or hybrid cars, all those items that they want to stupefy you into taking for granted come from the backs and the blood of the people of the world, millions of them children, super exploited in sweatshops owned by the U.S. imperialists, often in competition with similar sweatshops owned by the Chinese imperialists. Don't let them bribe you or blind you with these goodies. These are human beings just like you who are slaving away to create that wealth. And yes, China is imperialist and not socialist or somehow on the side of the people, despite what some so-called leftists may tell you. China hasn't been socialist for nearly 50 years, since the great revolutionary leader Mao Zedong died, and his comrades were overthrown by a clique that decided to keep the name socialist while turning the country into a capitalist hell. Those new rulers have built themselves up over time, and now they're flexing their muscles. And both of these bloody empires, America and China, are caught in a trap if they don't keep expanding their domination and plunder. if they let their rival get the edge. For them, that's the equivalent of death. That domination and plunder is what they are contending over. That is what they are preparing to risk nuclear war and the very existence of humanity over. That is what they are either whipping you up about or else keeping you sedated over. Yes, the Democrats as well as the Republic-fascists. And in this case, actually, the warmongering is coming directly from the Democrats that you are being told to line up behind this November as your last hope. Because both the fascists and the Democrats, however much they are at each other's throats over how to rule this empire, are agreed that the empire itself must stand and must be ready to fight for its position, even if that fight risks the destruction of humankind. But don't worry. After all, we've got Bernie and AOC and the rest of the socialists in Congress. And here's what they said to condemn this provocative act of Pelosi and the rest. That's right. We searched online for comments. We contacted their office. And we couldn't find anything. In fact, Bernie's representative said very cheerfully, "We don't have anything for you now." Want to know why? Bernie's whole project of a more equitable division of the wealth would be nothing without the spoils plundered by America from the rest of the world. The whole project of Bernie and the squad, quiet as it's kept, also rests on make America first, even if they don't want to be quite as crude as Trump about it. If you're someone who joined the Democratic Socialists of America or the DSA because you really do care about humanity and not just the people who happen to live in this country, and because you think that or you thought that electing socialists like Bernie will make for a more just world, or at least won't do any harm, maybe you need to come to grips with the logic of Bernie's position and with what humanity really needs. A revolution against all empires and all forms of oppression. But what about those leaders of the woke movements, some of whom over the past 2 months have trained their fire on trying to cancel, or worse, Bob Avakian, the RevComs, and the mass organization Rise Up for Abortion Rights? Well, here's what they've been saying. Surprised? You shouldn't be. Here's a point that Bob Avakian made last year. Quote, "It's striking that so many woke people do not expose and condemn the fact that the country they are living in, the good old USA, has, over nearly a century, been the most powerful imperialist oppressor in the world and the greatest destroyer of the environment, doing the greatest harm to humanity. How much, in all the woke talk about privilege, is there a denouncing and renouncing of American privilege, of American supremacy, and American chauvinism? How much a clear-cut stand that American imperialism should be firmly opposed in its attempt to maintain its position as number one oppressor worldwide, and that the masses of people in this country have no interests and no stake in American imperialism's rivalry with China, itself a rising capitalist-imperialist power? How much a reckoning with the fact that people in this country share, even though quite unequally, in the spoils that come from American imperialism's plunder of the world's people, including masses of children? How much an orientation and declaration that it would be far better to do without these spoils, by doing away with American imperialism and struggling together with people all over the world to be rid of all imperialism and all relations of exploitation and oppression, all plunder of people, as well as the environment. Not very much. That quote is from the article, Revolution and Emancipation, Not Petty Reform and Revenge, on Movements, Principles, Methods, Means and Ends. Look, things are coming to a head around the world and in a very concentrated way within this country itself. We, all of us, have to draw a bold line between the interests of humanity and the interests of America's empire. And we, all of us, have to choose the side of humanity. It's one or the other. And the future really is a choice, as B.A. says in his extremely important work, between something terrible or something truly emancipating. If you like what we say on this show, you need to come in tighter. And as a first step, help us to rapidly expand our audience. And you need to get deeper into B.A., Bob Avakian. Read and listen to what they so desperately don't want you to check out, what they so desperately slander. Get with, get into, help build the movement for the revolution humanity so desperately needs and the new communism brought forward by Bob Avakian.